general do not pay enough attention to our local and county races. And yet here, we do, but in general. And the state attorney position is extremely important. That's how criminal justice is reformed, and that's the best way to do it. So talk about, coming out of the Senate race, like where you were and like what led you to go, be specifically for this seat.
Yeah. So, yes, this is a much, in some ways, an easier race just because Iowa is a very large state and it's pretty taxing driving 4 hours to speak for 15 minutes and then driving home for 4 hours. Doing that for a year is a lot. So, everywhere that I speak now is in Polk County, which is where I live, of course. So it's just logistically, of course, in that one small way, it's easier. But everything else, I think, is, very similar. So what happened after the U.S. Senate race was quite literally, I was out running, had my earbuds in, and I was listening to a podcast called Getting Curious with Jonathan Van Ness, which is an excellent podcast. Jonathan Van Ness is a brilliant guy and curious, as his podcast says, and he has all different people on there from all different topics. Just like he'll have a reptile expert on one day, and then the next day have Rachel Rollins, the district attorney of Suffolk County, which is the Boston area. And that was the podcast I happened to be hearing that day. And, I was trying to decide, folks, if anybody's ever run for office, when you lose an election, you start, of course, thinking about, do I even want to run for anything again? If I do, what do I want to run for? And so I was out for a run, heard this interview with Rachel Rollins, who's now the U.S. attorney for Massachusetts. But she was the DA, state's attorney, county attorney. Those are all interchangeable terms in the United States.
Yeah.
And she was talking about this reform and all of the things that she was changing and the way that the local criminal justice system operates, and about what you said, basically, that if we want criminal justice reform, the way that we're not going to get it in a substantive way from the feds, depending on the state you live in. Here in Iowa, we're not going to get it from my state legislature because it's a Republican-dominated state legislature and governor here in Iowa. So how we change our justice system is one DA's office at a time, one county attorney's office at a time. And that's the fastest way to get change. And so there's been what I call a forward-thinking, evidence-based prosecutor movement now in this country for 5-6 years. That's just gaining steam with every single election cycle, and more folks are getting elected. So I heard Rachel talk about this, and I literally stopped running, and I was like, just listening to, because even though I've spent 22 years representing indigent defendants, both the criminal defense side and the juvenile court side, as well as doing mediation and collaborative law, but I've spent a lot of time in courtrooms on the other side of a table from a prosecutor, and I know that world, but I just didn't know a whole lot about how drastically we would be able to change things if we just changed the county attorney, we just changed the district attorney. So I started thinking about that. And also that was right around the time, it was just a few weeks after Mr. Floyd was murdered in Minnesota, which is just to our north, not that far from here. And so, I was out with a lot of folks at protests over the summer, and our county attorney here, who's actually a Democrat, was prosecuting a journalist who was at a BLM protest. That became international headlines because she was the only journalist in the world that was taken to trial. There was 130 journalists arrested during that whole summer of protests, but only one in the whole nation was taken to trial, and it was Andrea Sahuri here from the Des Moines Register in Polk County.
I think he's getting money from NextEra Energy, probably. Pretty likely. You mess with those pipelines, baby, you're going to have a real problem on your hands.
Yeah. So she was acquitted, to state the obvious, but the trial was a joke. And, that was There was just a lot of things going on in the Polk County Attorney's Office that I knew anecdotally and from working in it, but seeing these systemic issues, really brought to the forefront, combined with just the moment of, hey, everyone's waking up, we need significant change. Just kind of all combined together to make me want to do this. And of course, you have to be an attorney to run for Polk County Attorney, which I am already. So it just seemed like a really good fit. And, when I ran for U.S. Senate, it was because of justice, economic justice, criminal justice reform, environmental justice, all kinds of, racial justice, social justice. It's no different. I mean, it's the same reason I'm running for Polk County Attorney, because we need reform and we need things to change, and they're not changing. So I decided to do this, and it's been almost a year. June, I think early June is when we announced. So it's been almost a year of campaigning, and
that's really, no, I think it's awesome. No, it's extremely important. And I actually love when defense attorneys go work for the state attorney's office. That is a revolving door in a good direction. A good friend of mine here she worked in the PD's office, and she actually ran for public defender. And she lost, and the guy who won is not somebody she wanted to work for. And she ended up going over to the state attorney's office, and she never thought of that before. And now, you get to make a difference before it gets to the defendant's the defense attorney's desk. And I think it's sort of I love the idea of defense-minded attorneys being in the state attorney's office. I think that we need more of that, actually.
Well, we just got a new Supreme Court justice who has served as a public defender.
It's so exciting.
That probably more than any other reason is what should be celebrated.
Well, and she's the first in a few justices that has actually tried a case at all. So, we're right.
That's crazy to me, but okay. Yeah. I mean, and of course there's always noise about whenever a defense attorney runs to be a prosecutor, which has happened many times in the last several years in this country. But you've never been a prosecutor. How can you know what you're doing? You've never been a prosecutor. I get how it can be hard for people that aren't lawyers to understand, but if you have trial experience and you have courtroom experience and that's the world you live in, it's not like, oh, you've been a heart surgeon. How could you ever be an orthopedic surgeon? You have no training in that. It's not, it's not that different. And we work to preserve people's constitutional rights as defense attorneys, right? And so we have to know what's going on there. And then there's so many things that need changing here in Polk County, specifically one of them that is really close to my heart because I represent a lot of abused and neglected kids in juvenile court, is how our justice system affects kids, especially here in Iowa. So a year ago, November, our own Iowa Department of Human Rights Division of Criminal and Juvenile Justice Planning came out with this gem. I mean, it is a good study, but it's unfortunate. The results are unfortunate. Right. Racial disparities, an analysis of 3 decision points in Iowa's juvenile justice system. I make a lot of notes on things when I see that. So this has, statistics in it like in 2019, African-American youth aged 10 to 17 in Iowa were 6.5 times more likely to enter the juvenile justice system for a simple misdemeanor compared to white youth.
Yeah. Florida is particularly bad here.
But we're number one. So the sentencing project, here's where we're number one. You might think, some state in the South, if you just presume the South is going to be worse, which a lot of Northerners, they do. And it's not true. It's not true. So last summer, the Sentencing Project came out with a study that ranked Iowa dead last in the nation. We detain, which is incarceration, basically. We detain more Black youth per capita in Iowa than any other state in the nation.
Oh, that's bad. That is a really bad thing. I mean, I'm not remotely surprised that happens, but it is interesting that it's Iowa. That is what's interesting. I mean, you would think that would be here. Actually, and we're high up there. We are like our disparities are pretty
Florida
bad.
doesn't need to be number one in everything.
I know we could share the limelight with Iowa from time to time.
Right. Yeah. So that's something. And Polk County is the largest county in the state. That's Des Moines is located in Polk County. It's the most populated county. It's the most diverse county. Iowa is a heavily predominantly white state, but a lot of our people of color are concentrated in the larger city areas, especially here in Polk County. And so we just have so much opportunity here, more than I wish we did, to improve, and to really change, especially our juvenile justice system. So we have a lot of opportunities here. Allegedly, we have some kind of restorative justice program here. I say allegedly because the Polk County Attorney's Office website says something about a restorative justice program. But in reality, I've never heard a huge amount about it. So it doesn't seem like it's very robust if it does exist. But we need to really triple down on that. And, we also need more funding for it. I've also visited with a lot of forward-thinking prosecutors across the country over the past year, and they've all recommended we get a grant writer immediately and start applying for federal grants for some of this stuff because our state legislature is not going to provide funding for us. But we can get money from the feds for that, and that's what we hope to do.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.